Nick, it's awesome to see you.
It's great to be here. Thank you for including me on the new show.
I like your hair.
Thank you.
Yeah, it does look good. Your general partner at Castle Island Ventures, you guys just raised, what, $250 million for your third round?
Early this year.
Okay, cool. So you're like the perfect guy to talk to about this stuff. I got to tell you, I feel like at this point, we've been hearing about the promises of the blockchain, seems like for the better part of a decade at this point. Apart though, and crypto too. But to me, apart from making a few people just fabulously wealthy, I still haven't seen how this technology has actually made our lives better.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the promises were pretty vacuous, to be honest with you. So, yeah, I can't sort of endorse things that, my predecessors may have said, but, the core thing, the number one thing we were endeavoring to solve as an industry was alternative monetary systems. Those have been built, those exist. Whether or not they're going to achieve the penetration the crypto acolytes think they might, that's an open question. We'll see. I think that depends on what happens in sort of the real world with the currency crises and things like that. There is sort of the Web3 space, which I would say we're seeing real, actual real world use cases, which are emerging, which are fairly interesting. And then the last thing I would point out would be stable coins. To me, that is something that a lot of early crypto people didn't understand, didn't necessarily even want. They didn't seek to build that. But those have actually, proved to be the first killer app of crypto.
So you used a lot of my favorite words between stablecoins and Web3, but I want to start with one of the first things you said, which is alternative money systems. And this is something that we actually talk about a lot, and truly we do. So I guess we hear about crypto a lot as an investment rather than a utility.
Yeah.
And when you say that, I mean, the problem that has been trying to solve, leaving aside all the bad promises that were made by some of your predecessors, the alternative money system, I mean, does crypto have to be a utility?
Does it need to be used transactionally?
Yeah.
I think any monetary good satisfies all the qualities of money. So, yeah, there should definitely be transactional use. What we're seeing is a decoupling between sort of like crypto commodities like Bitcoin and Ether, which are they have a lower velocity, and then versus stables, which are used as a medium of exchange, almost as a collateral type, and empirically they have higher velocities. So it's almost like that first idea that crypto assets like Bitcoin would be used transactionally, that's not really proven to be the case.
Why is that though? I mean, because if you think back to like 2017, 2018, every few months there was this new news item, right? Every few days actually, it was like, oh, so-and-so company is accepting crypto, and then you'd see the price of Bitcoin go up. It was actually, this company's accepting Bitcoin, then the price of Bitcoin would go up. And Tesla was like, oh, we're gonna start accepting Bitcoin,
yeah.
until they didn't. Why didn't that stick?
That was kind of, I think it just doesn't really actually make that much sense to use a volatile crypto asset transactionally, for the reason that the U.S. asserts the primacy of the dollar from a tax perspective, right? So even relative to foreign currencies, right? If you hold a foreign currency material amount and it appreciates, you are now on the hook you have a tax liability, right? So you have to, keep track of that. There's the accounting overhead. So it's the same with a crypto asset. You have to track your tax basis when you spend it. That is a considerable friction that means that nobody's really willing to conduct commerce. In crypto terms, they would rather stay in dollars. And so that's just a barrier which I don't really see being lifted anytime soon. Why would the government give up the privileged position that the dollar enjoys?
Okay, I want to talk about regulators.
Are you scared?
No.
Is this an industry that can be trusted to regulate itself?
It has shown no willingness to regulate itself historically, none whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So it's unclear to me what self-regulation would look like.
So then how do you, as a VC, as an investor, sort of navigate and build a portfolio with that sort of huge question mark overhang? The fact that this industry hasn't shown any willingness to regulate itself, and you have regulators over here making very worried noises. Haven't yet really done anything, but made a lot of noise.
From the securities regulation standpoint, the SEC has shown no willingness to engage productively with the industry, none whatsoever. What would I have expected? A alternative model for tokens to engage in disclosure for material facts, the same way we have that in the regular, public equity land. But we have seen no signs whatsoever of legislative moves on that front, or the SEC being willing to lay that out.
So what are the repercussions of that? Does that mean that we start to see crypto firms increasingly leave the United States because there's no clear regulatory framework?
Even though the U.S. is kind of challenged from that perspective, there's not that many other jurisdictions that are much better, frankly. People thought Singapore was a safe haven, proved not to be. The MAS is just as tough as the SEC, if not worse. People thought Europe might be. Europe has new super aggressive crypto legislation. The U.S. still maintains the most vibrant capital markets in the world, obviously the most venture capital, and the bulk of activity is still here. My view is stay and engage and fight if necessary, rather than fleeing to some other tax haven or something like that. The UK has actually shown willingness to engage with the industry, but I think American startups and crypto firms are going to have to do what they can with the local regulators.
So if you could wave a magic wand or go to Capitol Hill and write this legislation yourself, I mean, what's a framework that you would want to see?
I would codify stable coins and give them access to the central bank directly. That would abate a lot of the questions that people have about their reliability and their ability to be liquid in times of stress. I would give issuers of tokens an ability to acknowledge that they actually are serving as a kind of pseudo equity. I would give these issuers the ability to make the salient disclosures to investors that ought to be made, and craft a framework such that they could do that. And frankly, I think that the disclosure quality would be better than what we have in public markets with quarterly filings, because in crypto, if your business is an on-chain component, you can get real-time financials, right? You can pull the data literally directly from the blockchain, and you can get financials on a per block basis. Things are generally more transparent in crypto because the cash flows are on-chain, and public blockchains are inherently transparent.
What do you think will actually happen?
I think it's likely we do get stablecoin legislation maybe this year. I think the SEC will continue to stonewall us. I would like the CFTC to assert its authority maybe over spot markets. That seems right. A lot of these things look like commodities. So it'd be nice if they were able to win some more discretion there. But yeah, I think Gensler is very ambitious, and from his outward public statements, he has not so far appeared willing to engage. And so I think it's going to be a really tough time the next few months and years here.
I started off by asking you about the promises of crypto and the blockchain not necessarily being delivered, at least what we were promised over the last decade. Let's look forward now and just think about the next decade. 10 years from now, we're sitting here. What has gotten better in our lives as a result of this technology? Where are we touching it every day?
I would say you are looking at an explosion of Web3 consumer. So one I would point out would be social media, communications networks, where the topology, the hierarchy is much flatter. So you as the owner of your credentials can choose to engage with a particular platform. You have free entry and free exit. So
it's like I take my followers from Twitter to a new site.
Because you own your identity, right? Literally.
But what is that identity? What do I own of that identity? Like every tweet I've ever sent?
I would imagine a world where basically the specific platforms become much less empowered relative to the users, and we're not worried about Twitter's governance policies or their censorship policies or Facebook's, because there's so many more competing platforms because the costs of exit and entry are much lower. And so I think that's an overall better situation because now you can opt in to whatever platform with whatever rules you want. Arguably, that's a much better situation, and we don't have the situation where governments are trying to use these platforms as choke points to gain informational control. They're not trying to influence the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world.
And so I want to talk a little bit more about Web3 though, because I like that you're excited, but I want to be cynical. And I mean, to your point about the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, a cynical person might say that when you think about Web3, it's probably going to be built by the same guys who built Web2. That I know the ideal is that it's going to take power away from these huge social media companies, but realistically, wouldn't it be built by sort of existing companies that are already out there, sort of those big players who already exist, or who do you see building it? That was a very ineloquently phrased question.
Web3 will be built by a new set of entities for the same reason that large companies don't disrupt themselves. They don't have the institutional ability to make wholesale pivots. Facebook may be an exception, frankly, because Zuckerberg does exercise a lot of control there, and he's pivoting hard into the metaverse. So we'll see what he can do there. But generally speaking, large incumbents that are established, their incentive is not to experiment and disrupt themselves. And so I think it would be a new set of entities that are much more open-minded and much more willing to support natively open systems, which is what Web3 or blockchains get you, is interoperability. None of these large social internet platforms want interoperability. They want to lock you in. They want to create a walled garden, right? You cannot leave Twitter with your followers or leave Facebook. I don't even know how Facebook works. I haven't used it in forever. And I think that's just a fundamentally much better model.
Nick Carter, thanks for coming to New York.
My pleasure. Thank you.
What did you learn?
I actually knew all of that, so I didn't learn anything because I'm extremely smart.
You knew all of that?
Mm-hmm. We didn't even get to seed oils.
I know. I did get to talk a little with Nick off camera about what he eats.
Yeah.
1 meal a day, 8 p.m.
That's nuts.
He had nothing to eat yet.
I know that's for longevity purposes. I feel like that's not good for your metabolism.
Well, he's going to be laughing when we're dead.
Yeah, it's true. Hopefully soon.
Okay, that's a nice way to end the show.
We have more chances.
Yeah, this was only episode 2.
That's true.
We'll get you food next time.
Thank you.